I still remember the exact moment I stopped loving Lauren. It wasn't the first time I caught her lying. It wasn't even when I realized she had been screwing around with some clown behind my back. No, it was the moment she stood in our kitchen, looked me dead in the eyes, and tried to gaslight me into believing I was crazy for even suspecting her. That was when something inside me snapped. That was the moment I knew she was dead to me. I didn't say anything right away. Didn't rage. Didn't flip the table. Hell, I didn't even call her out. I just stood there, nodding along like a fool, letting her believe she had me wrapped around her lying little finger. Because I had a plan. And trust me, I was about to execute it to perfection. Lauren thought she was untouchable. Thought she was so damn clever, sneaking around with her little side piece, while I was working my ass off to keep our home running. She figured she had me under control, that I was the dumb, oblivious husband who'd just keep on smiling, while she got her thrills on the side. She had no idea I'd been watching. Waiting. I played dumb for weeks, all while gathering everything I needed. Bank records, phone logs, texts, pictures. Oh yeah, I had receipts. It wasn't hard. She wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed when it came to covering her tracks. But I wasn't just planning to divorce her. No, that would be too easy. Lauren needed to feel this. She needed to experience true loss. So I got to work. I drained our joint bank account, every last cent cashed out my retirement, just enough to tank our savings, but still stay legal. Sold my car, then transferred the money, somewhere she couldn't touch. Froze the credit cards. Oh, and the house? Yeah, sold that too. She just didn't know it yet. While I was making my moves, Lauren was out there thinking she had won. Thinking she had this whole thing figured out. I let her keep thinking that. Let her go on her little 6-week trip overseas, supposedly for volunteer work. In reality, she was off screwing her affair partner. That was perfect, because while she was out there playing house with her side piece, I was erasing her from everything. By the time she got back, her entire life would be unrecognizable, and I couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she realized just how thoroughly I had destroyed her. Lauren had no idea what was waiting for her when she stepped off that plane. I can only imagine the look on her face, strutting through the airport, expecting to come home to me, to our house, to the life she thought she had on lock. Maybe she even rehearsed some fake apology in her head, ready to throw just enough words at me to make me doubt myself, to make me cave. But I wasn't there to pick her up. No warm reunion, no forced smiles. Just a whole lot of empty where her life used to be. She must have started feeling it when she got in that hotel shuttle, rolling toward the Ambassador Hotel, the elegant, 5-star hotel she booked for a single night, fully expecting to meet me there. Like nothing happened. Maybe she thought I was still sulking, that I needed a little cool-down period before I came crawling back, desperate for her validation. Maybe she imagined I had spent the last 6 weeks missing her, thinking about how I couldn't live without her. She had no idea. She walked into that hotel lobby like she still owned the world, completely unaware that I had burned it all down behind her. She approached the front desk, smiling, confident. "Hi, I'm checking in. There should be a reservation for Lauren Whitmore." The clerk typed a few keys, nodded, and asked, "How many key cards will you need?" "Oh, 2. My husband will be joining me." She still believed it. She reached into her purse, pulled out her visa, and handed it over like the entitled queen she thought she was. The clerk slid it into the reader, paused, frowned. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your card has been declined. Do you have another one?" A pit must have formed in her stomach, but she didn't panic. Not yet. She handed over her Discover card, expecting this to be some minor inconvenience. The clerk tried again. Same result. Lauren forced a laugh. "That's weird. I've been out of the country. Maybe there's a fraud alert." The clerk smiled politely, but behind those customer service eyes, I knew what he was thinking. She's broke. Lauren stepped away from the counter, pulling out her phone. That's when the real horror started. She dialed my number. Instead of a ringtone, she got, "This number has been disconnected and is no longer in service." Boom. Panic. Pure, unfiltered dread. She tried again. Same robotic voice. Same realization slowly sinking in. She wasn't calling me. She was calling a ghost. And that's when the man I hired walked up. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you Lauren Whitmore?" She turned to him, still gripping her useless phone, her face probably pale. "Why, yes. Can I help you?" He handed her a thick manila envelope. "No, ma'am, but your husband wanted you to have this." She took it, hands shaking, and then he walked away. No dramatic "you've been served." No explanation. Just a silent, suffocating weight pressing down on her chest as she stared at that envelope, knowing, deep down, that her world was about to collapse. Lauren sat down in the nearest chair, gripping the envelope like it might explode. With trembling fingers, she peeled it open, pulled out the letter inside, and began to read. And that's when she learned just how thoroughly I had erased her. Lauren's hands shook as she unfolded the letter. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. I wonder if she even took a full breath as she read the first line. Lauren, by the time you read this, I will be long gone. Her eyes must have darted across the page, scanning for anything to ground her in reality. But there was no lifeline, no soft landing, no hope. You thought you could come back, slip into my arms like nothing happened. You thought you had me waiting like some desperate, lovesick fool. But you don't. You never did. Lauren blinked rapidly, fighting the urge to crumble in that lobby chair. She kept reading, her stomach twisting, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Everything you built your safety net on. I burned it down. The house. Sold. The cars. Gone. The bank accounts. Emptied. Your name. Worthless. Your credit cards declined because I paid off the balances and closed the accounts. Your phone can't reach me because I changed my number and cut you off completely. You have no home to return to, no savings to fall back on, and no husband to manipulate anymore. You don't exist to me. Lauren must have swallowed hard, gripping the letter as if she could squeeze it into a different reality, a different outcome. But the words didn't change. And don't bother looking for me. I'm not staying in one place long enough for you to find me. I sold the house and everything in it. I packed what little I cared about into an RV, and I'm hitting the road. So don't waste your breath with apologies. Don't try to call our friends and beg for sympathy. Don't even think about going to my family for help. They know. Everyone knows. Your affairs aren't a secret, Lauren. They're public knowledge. I sent the proof to everyone in our social circle, friends, family, co-workers. I wanted them to see you for what you are. I wonder how work will go for you on Monday. Oh, wait. You don't have a job anymore. I took the liberty of sharing your extracurricular activities with HR at the hospital. Turns out, they don't appreciate their employees violating the morality clause in their contracts. Especially not with an arrogant, egotistical doctor who used his position to prey on another man's wife. You and Trey. Terminated. And no, they won't be giving you a reference. Good luck explaining that in your next job interview. Lauren's hands must have been trembling now, her vision blurring as she neared the end of the letter. I'm not divorcing you. That must have made her freeze for a second. Maybe she thought she had some leverage left, some control over the situation. I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I'm done with you. You want out? You file. You pay the legal fees. You do the work. You were so quick to rewrite our marriage when it suited you. So now you can be the one to erase it completely. Lauren must have felt her stomach turn as she reached the final words. I loved you once. I don't even hate you now. I feel nothing. You're just a person I used to know. She probably sat there for a long time, numb, hollow, stripped of everything she thought was hers. And as reality set in, that she had no home, that she had no money, that she had no job, that she had no one left. I hope she realized something. She never left me. I left her first. Lauren sat frozen in the hotel lobby, the letter shaking in her trembling hands, her mind desperately clawing for an escape route, some thread of denial she could hold on to. But there was none, just the slow, agonizing realization that everything she had built her life around had been turned to ash while she was busy playing house with a man who never really cared for her beyond the fleeting satisfaction of her body and the power he wielded over her fragile sense of self-worth. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps, her vision swimming, the walls of the grand, elegant lobby pressing in around her as if the entire world was mocking her downfall, reveling in the spectacle of a woman who once thought she had it all: security, love, a stable home, now reduced to a discarded relic of her own recklessness, a woman who had gambled with everything and lost in the most spectacular, humiliating way possible. She gripped the letter tighter, as though sheer force of will could change the words, could undo the devastation they carried. But the truth was already seeping into her bones, a cold, merciless weight that settled deep in her gut, threatening to drag her down into the abyss of consequences she never thought she'd have to face. A lump formed in her throat as she swallowed the sob, threatening to escape, her mind racing through the long, meticulous destruction her husband had orchestrated, the ruthless efficiency with which he had dismantled every single safety net she had taken for granted, her home, her finances, her job, her very identity, all erased, leaving her stranded, abandoned, utterly alone in the wreckage of her own making. She wanted to scream, to lash out, to deny it. But there was nothing to fight, no one to argue with, just the blunt, inescapable fact that Rick had won, and not in some petty, vengeful way, no. He had obliterated her in a way she never even saw coming, a way that left her scrambling for air, for balance, for anything to hold on to, but finding only the harsh, unrelenting truth that she had lost him, truly and completely, and there was no coming back from this. The walls of the life she had built with him, the foundation she had so carelessly chipped away at, had collapsed entirely, and now she stood amidst the ruins, stripped bare, the weight of her own arrogance and selfishness pressing down on her chest, suffocating her, crushing her beneath the burden of her own failures. Her hands clenched into fists, the letter crumpling in her grip, but what could she do? She had nothing, not even the dignity of rage, not even the comfort of blaming someone else, because this, all of this, was her doing, her own choices brought to life in the most brutal, unforgiving way possible, and now she had to live with it, with the knowledge that the man she had betrayed, the man she had thought would always be there waiting, had walked away and never looked back. Tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them away, refusing to break down in the middle of the hotel, refusing to let the strangers around her witness the moment she finally, irrevocably shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. She reached into her purse, her fingers fumbling for her phone, desperate to call someone, anyone, but as she scrolled through her contacts, reality struck her again. Rick had cut her off, severed every tie, erased himself from her world so thoroughly that even his phone number was gone, replaced with nothing but silence, an empty void where he used to be. A sharp, painful sob clawed its way up her throat, and she clenched her jaw, forcing it back down, because crying wouldn't fix this, wouldn't undo what she had done, wouldn't bring Rick back, wouldn't give her a home, a future, a chance at redemption. She had thought she could control everything, that she could dictate the terms of her betrayal, that she could come back and smooth things over, but she had underestimated him. God, had she underestimated him? She had expected anger, resentment, maybe even a bitter, drawn-out divorce battle. But this cold, methodical annihilation, she never saw it coming. She never thought Rick had it in him. She had been so sure he was just the dependable, predictable man she had married, the man who would never dare to upend her world the way she had upended his. And yet, here she was. No home, no job, no husband, no way out, just the crushing, unbearable weight of her own ruin. A laugh, sharp and bitter, escaped her lips, startling even herself, because the irony of it all was just too much. The sheer audacity of her own arrogance, the way she had thought she could have it all, Rick's loyalty and Trey's attention, stability and excitement, security and recklessness, without consequence, without fallout, without ever having to pay the price. But the price had come due, and Rick had made sure she paid it in full. Lauren sat in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity, her body numb, her mind trapped in an endless loop of disbelief, as though if she just stayed still long enough, reality would somehow shift, would somehow twist itself into something more bearable. But it didn't. The truth sat there, heavy and immovable, crushing her beneath its weight. There was no home to go back to, no money, no job, no Rick. The life she had so carelessly gambled away was gone, obliterated in a cold, calculated act of vengeance that she never saw coming, never even thought possible. She had underestimated him in the worst possible way, assumed he would always be there, waiting, like a fool who didn't know his own worth. But Rick was no fool. She was. The thought burned through her like acid, eating away at whatever pitiful shreds of pride she had left. She had built her life around the certainty that Rick loved her too much to ever walk away. She had been so sure that he was the kind of man who would take the pain and swallow it, who would rage and fume and maybe even threaten divorce, but never actually go through with it, never leave, never erase her from his world, like she had never existed. And yet he had. The man who had spent over 20 years building a life with her had torn it all down in a matter of weeks. And what did she have left? Nothing. Lauren clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms, but the sting was nothing compared to the agony swelling inside her chest. This was worse than heartbreak, worse than guilt. This was desolation, the kind of emptiness that stretched on forever, endless and suffocating. A hollow laugh bubbled up in her throat, dry and bitter. "You did this to yourself," she whispered, the words barely audible, as if saying them any louder would shatter her into even smaller, more irreparable pieces. Her phone lay in her lap, dark and useless, no messages, no missed calls, no hope. She had tried dialing Rick again, But the automated voice taunting her with "this number is no longer in service" felt like a final, cruel slap to the face. And then there was the email. She had finally mustered up the courage to check it, her hands trembling as she opened her inbox, only to find a final nail in her coffin. Rick's message, sent to every single one of their mutual contacts. Family, friends, co-workers, everyone. There, attached for the world to see, were the photos, the evidence of her affair, the proof of her betrayal, immortalized in high-definition clarity by the private investigator Rick had hired. Lauren scrolled through the images with detached horror, her own face staring back at her in each one, her body tangled up with trays, her expression blissfully unaware that this moment, this selfish, fleeting indulgence, would be the wrecking ball that destroyed everything she had ever known. Her hands trembled as she read the message Rick had sent alongside the photos. To those of you who ever wondered what kind of woman Lauren truly is, here's your answer. For 20 years, I was nothing but loyal to her, and in return, she treated our marriage like a game, a joke. While I was breaking my back to build a future for us, she was busy sharing a bed with another man. She thought I would never find out. She thought I would forgive her. She thought she could have it all. But actions have consequences. So here they are. Lauren wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her throat was too tight, her lungs too constricted, her body too frozen with humiliation. They all knew. Her children, her parents, her closest friends, her colleagues at the hospital. Every single person who mattered had seen it. There was no way to spin this, no way to manipulate the narrative, no way to salvage her reputation. She was ruined. A sharp chime interrupted her spiral of despair. Another email notification flashing across the screen. Subject, termination of employment. Her breath caught as she opened it, scanning the cold, impersonal words from HR that confirmed what she already suspected. Effective immediately, she was fired. The hospital had reviewed the evidence of her misconduct and determined that her actions violated their professional ethics policy. Her hands gripped the phone so tightly that she thought it might shatter, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Her life was over. Not just the marriage. Not just her home. Everything. She was unemployed, disgraced, and completely alone. A broken sob finally tore free from her throat, raw and ragged, her body folding in on itself as she curled up in the plush hotel chair, shaking, gasping for air, for clarity, for anything that could ground her in a reality that no longer felt real. Rick was gone. Her safety net was gone. The future she had once taken for granted was nothing more than a distant, shattered dream. And the worst part? He was never coming back. She could beg. She could cry. She could throw herself at his feet and plead for mercy. But it wouldn't matter. Rick had already made his decision. And Lauren? Lauren had finally lost everything.